Welcome to the Human Longevity Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Melissa Petersen. Together, we're about to explore the science and solutions that will help you live better, longer. Today, we're going to discover the world of small molecules, these tiny particles that, well, do they or don't they actually help to remodel the DNA to slow down and even reverse the biological aging process? To answer this question, we're going to look at one of the recent research studies that was published in Aging that took 24 top leading molecules, both prescribed and non-prescribed, everything from supplements and peptides to prescriptions. And we're going to see what really stacked up because there were only 6 clear winners, 6 small molecules that are shown to actually remodel the DNA. Now, why this is so significant is that today's guest, Tom Weldon, he's the founder and CEO of Ponce Health, as well as Rejuvant. Now, Rejuvant is a product. It's a longevity product. It's been on the market for several years now, and the research came out of the Bucks Institute of Aging. And this particular product has been really creating such groundbreaking swirl of excitement because the research on this particular product, well, it shows a 46% decrease in frailty, 41% increase in health span, a 12% increase in lifespan, and in people that use this with pre and post DNA test in as little as 8 months, they are reversing their biological age upwards of 8 years. And that's really stunning. So Tom is joining us because he's going to help us to understand how he was the early adopter. And yes, the key ingredient in his product, Rejuvant, is one of the top 6 that was just put in this, found to work in this massive study that was published in Aging and came out of David Sinclair's lab. So join us as we really kind of pull back the curtain. We look at what does it take to actually do these studies, bring a product to market, determine if it works, and how much is too much, and do we really need all of these longevity products that have 5, 10 ingredients in them? When is too much, and could less actually be more? So join us as we get into today's show. Tom, it's so amazing having you here with us today. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Petersen, for the invitation. Happy to be here.
All right, so I'm going to just take a moment and brag on you. You guys, if you've never heard of Rejuvant, okay, and this is, we're really going to be talking molecules today. So let me help to kind of bring you in. We're going to be looking at things in the research, things in the literature that are showing to have an effect at a cellular and genetic level, as well as things that have been buzzed about that really aren't kind of fleshing out in the literature to actually do what we've been told they will do. So we're going to demystify some of the current molecules you've heard so much about. We're going to talk what's really working, what isn't. But I want to take a moment. Tom, you're a serial entrepreneur. You literally started up one of the most profound incubators on the Innovation Factory in the medical technology space. You've raised over $2 billion for your shareholders. So you are this amazing, engineer, business mind. And I don't mean any disrespect. You're not necessarily a doctor working in the field every day. And that's not a disrespect. I'm very curious. How did you come to develop Rejuvant? How did you come to garner this research that you're going to share with us today that shows, you guys listen, you're going to want to listen, okay? 8 years biological age reversal in as little as 8 months. If that doesn't get you excited to keep listening, I don't know what will. So Tom, how do you, businessman, all of a sudden discover this incredible molecule, and now you're bringing it to market and it's literally sweeping Hollywood and all the top clinical spaces?
So, I've had success building a variety of different companies, all in the med tech space, cardiology, aesthetics, actually, orthopedics. There was a pain relief. There was a whole series of things that, that we have started companies around. So the formula for doing that is pretty straightforward. Doesn't mean it's easy to do, but it is pretty straightforward. You only go after huge markets. And the reason is because if you go after small markets, the cost to get FDA approval, the cost to get reimbursement, it doesn't matter the market size. You still have to spend, $70 million roughly in order to do that. And if the whole market is only $50 million, why would you do that? The math just doesn't work, right? So you focus on really large market opportunities you have to be able to get a product that works better, and you have to be able to measure it in a clinical trial. Then you have to be able to get intellectual property. And so if you're able to do those things, usually, if there's not a war or a global pandemic going on, you can raise money. Not only that, you can sell that at some point in the future, and everybody has a very, their lives become wonderful, and children sing songs about you, etc. So that's the objective. As a venture guy, when we started our first fund, I identified about 6 or 7 areas that I thought had those characteristics, one of which was longevity. And after being a VC for about 15 years, the only one that I never found an opportunity for was in the longevity space. I became convinced that there wasn't a device that would be helpful. It probably would have to be something you swallow, which is not my area of expertise. When we decided that we were not going to be able to raise another fund because medtech had fallen so far out of favor because of all those costs, actually, and the fact that nobody was buying them for, the amounts that they were paying for, internet security, for biotech, for all these other spaces, the math just didn't work well anymore. So I decided I would go back and do one last rodeo as a CEO. I've done a few. This was the last show, and the space I wanted to go after was longevity. Now, the really stupid thing about all this is, in retrospect, if you think that you were just like, I'm not a scientist, I'm not a biologist, I'm not a physician. So to think that you could just all of a sudden dance on into the longevity space, right, and solve the problem that's plagued humanity since the dawn of time, either means you are really naive or you have an ego that is enormous. And I probably had a bit of both. However, it didn't bother me that it might fail. If you're an entrepreneur, that's kind of the way the world is, right? I thought I had a better chance because I'd done it before. I didn't really understand 2 things.
Today's episode is brought to you by Rejuvant. Now listen, gang, if you are like me and you have spent a lot of money on the latest molecule supplements and vitamins that say that they will slow down that rate and pace of biological aging so you can have more energy, greater cognitive function, look better, feel better, all the things, and you're kind of wondering if they're working, then your search is over. That's why we've partnered up with Rejuvant, because this is the only product that has the type of human studies that have been conducted by the Bucks Institute of Aging. Now, they are the leaders in the field of longevity and anti-aging research, and the studies were profound. It works on upwards of 7 out of the 9 hallmarks of aging. It's going to be literally working at the DNA level. It is showing in the before and after DNA biological age test to literally begin to remodel your very DNA. Not only is it slowing down some of those things like reducing inflammaging and reactive oxygen species and helping to detoxify, it's doing so much more. It's literally activating cellular and DNA repair. So you are getting younger over time. We know that it decreases frailty by 41%, improves health span by 41%, increases lifespan by 12%. But here's the really cool thing. So they've been doing the research now for many years. And on average, participants that use this product for over 8 months see upwards of an 8-year biological age reversal. Wow. Now I'm on my 3rd month, and I can tell you that, man, my skin is radiant. My energy is better than it's ever been. And I'm so excited to see what my post DNA test is going to be in another 3 months. So, I'll keep you guys posted on that. But listen, come join me. They are giving us a 10% savings. You can get a 3-month supply, plus you can get that DNA methylation test kit so you can find out once and for all your biological age. No more guessing, no more wondering if these products are working. Let's test so that we don't guess and we can watch our data improve together. Go over to humanlongevity.institute.com. There, right here with this podcast episode, you're going to see the links below. You can use that coupon code Dr. M. Dr. M is going to save you 10%. It's going to get you those DNA test kits. And let's go ahead and reverse age together so we truly can think better, look better, feel better as we're living better longer together starting today. Let's get back to the episode.
As well as I normally would like to, because I just didn't understand this industry. One is direct to consumer. That's kind of a bitch. The other ones, all we had to do was run these huge trials, clinical trials, and if it was successful, doctors would buy it. They would want to buy it, right? Because they'd want a better solution for their patients. When we got started, there wasn't even DNA methylation. There was no way to measure a result. So it was subjective. And, if you think about subjective in the device space, you're talking about pain management, depression, right? Two things that if you bring somebody in and you test them, the act of testing them influences how they feel. If the tester smiles, right? Or starts
Very
yelling
true.
at them, right?
So true.
Yeah, so they're so subjective. And this falls into the subjective category, and it falls into the education category, two things that are death from a venture investment point of view. You don't want to put up risk capital if you're a venture capitalist to teach people that they need the product, right? So it was a bad idea, but I liked the market. $3 trillion annual opportunity, no competition. And so I felt I needed to get closer to the science. So I joined the advisory board at the Buck Institute for Research on Aging, which you had mentioned before, the world's largest institute studying aging and the effects of aging. That's where I met Brian Kennedy, who was the CEO of the Buck at the time. And so they were thrilled to have a VC, kind of on the board, and they showed me all the projects. My objective in joining was I'll see all the research, I'll find a project that I think is interesting, and I'll raise money for it. And that's how I'll start a company. I looked at everything they had, and I didn't think any of it was venture financeable. It was so risky, so long-term, and so expensive that it was just not practical for traditional venture. Other forms of capital, absolutely, but not venture. So I was very disappointed, but I decided to stay on the board anyway because I like the space so much. And then two things happened that changed my mind. One of the physicians came to me and said, gosh, what do you think about writing a paper on vitamin D3? Because it had a 30% increase in lifespan in the C. elegans model. And I said, wow, that's kind of amazing. And he said, well, but there's no business purpose to it. Nobody's going to really care. And I said, no, I don't think so, because people are tired of reading about stuff that might be 20 years away that only rich people can afford. Mm-hmm. And this is something that everybody can afford, and you can do it right now. Don't know if it's going to work in humans, but that's a pretty good initial indicator. And because it's grass, generally regarded as safe, there's no downside to doing it, right? And so I kept thinking about that. I thought, gosh, that's really interesting. And then I attended another lecture there on Alzheimer's. And I sat down in this auditorium with about 40 or 50 people. And the guy walks up, and the first thing he said out of his mouth was, he said, if anybody here thinks somebody is going to create one drug that'll solve this problem, they are naive. He said, Alzheimer's is incredibly complex. It is multifactorial. And then this little, I guess I'll use the traditional analogy, light bulb went off in my head. And I thought, that's interesting. Aging is incredibly complex and it's multifactorial. Otherwise, somebody would have solved the problem already, right? And then I just learned that a compound that has an effect on aging that's not a drug, and there's no safety profile issues from an FDA point of view, that's kind of intriguing as well. So the thought that a compound could affect aging that wasn't a drug never even entered my mind. And so then the investment thesis was, could you create a grass, generally regarded as safe, cocktail like the AIDS cocktail? Because if they were drugs, you would have to run an FDA trial on the individual compounds and then on the combination. Not only that, but the likelihood of one company having two compounds that were additive and necessary, um, being at one company is probably zero. And so then you've got these massive development costs that are going to be additive, making it totally unaffordable. So that was where Ponce de Leon Health was born. The idea of using natural supplements, supplements, vitamins, minerals. So I went to my dad. We have a small family foundation. And I said, hey, guess what? I want you to give me, $1 million, and I'm going to hire the buck to try this. And he said, well, that's interesting. Nobody is looking there. And so that's usually a good place to look, because that
Yeah.
means patents probably would be available. And you're not going to be competing with somebody that's got a zillion times more money than you. So we started the company. And then I talked to Dr. Kennedy. And he said, well, would you like us to look for a pathway, something new where you could find a target, you got something unique? And I said, you don't understand at all what I'm talking about here. My parents are in their early 80s, and I want to do something that can help them before they die. So I have
Yes.
a development timeline that's like a few years, like on one hand. So think about one hand. And I said, I don't want you to do that at all. I want you to do a literature search, which was not what the buck was thinking that they would be paid to do. I said, go find every grass compound, or even something that's probably grass, that has had a published paper showing an increase in lifespan from yeast to primates, and then show me the list. So they generated the list. It was like 33 compounds. So I said, all right, bring them all in, and we're going to test them one by one in the C. elegans model to make sure that they extend lifespan. And then after that, we're going to start testing them pairwise, then three-wise, then four-wise. And they had to develop an automatic way to do this, because normally they just have a graduate student that comes in and looks in and counts the number of guys that are alive. And then they come back the next day and do it again. And that wasn't going to work with a zillion petri dishes of C. elegans. So they came up with an automatic way to do this, shining lights, strobe lights, that kind of thing. And they did it but with photography. And so they could look at, and it was, they had an algorithm, and when there was no more movement, they were all dead, right? And so they could count them when they kind of stopped and automated it, everything, and that made it possible. So the interesting lessons from this are that more is not better after about 3 or 4 compounds. It becomes toxic and they all die. Bad business model, right? The other thing was, very few things seem to be additive. And what we kind of learned was about roughly, say, a quarter seemed to be additive. And so they were helpful. And then about a quarter, one compound was additive, but when you put the other one in, there was no additional effect. Then there was about a quarter that just canceled each other out, even though one was good and the other was good. Combined, they had no effect. And then about a quarter shortened lifespan.
Okay, Tom, I have to take a moment because what you're sharing right now, I I love highlighting this, and I don't think enough people really understand because we have grown up with the idea that more must be better. 1 plus 1 is 2, then let's give me 10 if that's going to make it even better. And especially when it comes to formulation. So the vitamins, the supplements that you are taking, and especially in this longevity space, let's just call it what it is. You're going to go to different sites and they're going to give you these products with multiple ingredients in them. And they're going to show you studies on each individual ingredient.
Right,
So yes, the
right. It's
ingredient
it's useless unless you're just taking one ingredient.
100%. So what you're saying is you guys watched real time in the petri dishes. Okay, if we have the one ingredient, but then what happens when we add in the second ingredient? or the third? And where is that break even? Like, when do all of a sudden things have no longer have a complementary or enhancing effect, but they actually start to take away? They can actually reverse, right? Like the effects that you're looking for. And that's so important for people to realize. Less is more. Please hear me. Less is more, less is more, less is more, especially in the supplements you're taking. You do not need to be taking 20 supplements a day. Tom, you and I just had a clinical call with a group of our doctors, and you were talking about, you kind of made the mention of, why understanding why you're taking the things you're taking, right? So the
Mhm.
supplements that you all are currently taking, why are you taking the things you're taking? Do you actually need them? Do you know they're working for you? Right? We get in kind of this habit of just popping a lot of pills that can start to cancel each other out. And one of the things I tell my clients and I tell our students all the time at Human Longevity Institute is even good can become bad in an overloaded system, and or good can become neutral or bad, right? When not just an overloaded system, but an overloaded stack. So stacking multiple ingredients together is not always meaning that more is better. So I just
Right.
thank
No, and
you for saying this.
right. In fact, I've had conversations with Yelena, the CEO of TrueMe, and the people that are taking stacks rarely are able to reverse their biologic age, even when the stacks include, alpha-ketoglutarate, for example. So, and it's just that it doesn't tend to work as well. They're getting some results, but not what she refers to as Rejuvant customer results, which are consistent and very strong. So we went into mice then. So went into the mammal model with the three compounds that were the best, strongest compounds individually and in combination, which was calcium alpha-ketoglutarate, berberine, which is a glucose modulator like metformin, and
Yep.
then vitamin D3.
Yep.
And so the first mouse trial, and they cost me $700,000, and they take about 18 months. So it's not an inexpensive activity, and I've done 4 of them now. And the things we tested were the individual compounds that worked best individually and also were friendly, if you will, in the sandbox together. And that was calcium alpha-ketoglutarate, by far the most powerful. And then second was berberine, which is a glucose modulator like metformin.
Yep.
And then last was vitamin D3. So in the way that Dr. Kennedy designed the trials, each one was tested individually, and then they were tested as pairs, and then they were tested all three. And it was, in a way, a huge, very expensive flop. And so the miraculous compound of all three was no better than control. In other words,
Oh,
taking nothing at all, they just canceled each other out. And the berberine combined with calcium alpha-ketoglutarate was slightly worse than control. And the only thing that performed extremely well was alpha-ketoglutarate alone. And then second, the berberine alone had a positive effect, but it was small. And then vitamin D3, I think it was not statistically significant. So that was, like I said, really disappointing and expensive. And so we went back, rethought a lot of things, thinking that, all right, some of these things are not playing well in the sandbox in the mammal model. And so we began testing pairwise with alpha-ketoglutarate was in. There was no way that was not in. And
right.
so then the game became find something that is additive to that. And again, doing a lot of testing and testing all of the things that you would say, oh, Tom, have you tried NMN? Have you tried Ficitin? Have you tried NR? Yes, we've tried all of those. And they don't have any effect on longevity in that model,
Right.
in combination or individually. And the things that did were later published as things that actually affect the epigenome, i.e., vitamin D3 and vitamin A. And so, what mattered, of course, was whether or not we were affecting the epigenome. All the rest of the stuff might have been, maybe the mouse felt better. They weren't as depressed. They didn't have joint pain. I have no idea, right? but they didn't live longer.
Yeah.
So that was the thing that was interesting. And that's how the product came about in its specific form. And then to go just a little bit further, so I then, as soon as I saw this data started, I bought what I call internet AKG. I thought, oh my God, this is it. We're just looking for something a little better. So we'll play around for a year or two putting stuff together, but I've got to have this now. So I had a physical, did all my blood work, tested everything, came back, it stunk, sort of like I was saying before. Um, I wasn't going to die right away, but I wasn't 24 years old. So,
Room for improvement.
yeah. So I started taking internet AKG, and I went back 6 months later, had all the blood work done again, and it had absolutely no effect whatsoever. And I thought, oh my God, it works in mice, but it doesn't work in humans. So what good is this? And so then I got to thinking about it, and I thought, I wonder what the bioavailability of this is. So I look it up, and it's like gone, in 60 seconds. So it's a 5-minute half-life. So it's not there. Why did it work in the mice? Well, the mice had no feeding restrictions. They ate whenever they wanted to continuously, day and night. So I called Dr. Kennedy up and I said, I think maybe we should try a sustained release formulation because it would more mimic the way the mouse got it, and it might get around the problem of bioavailability of AKG. So we said, that sounds like a great idea. We went out, paid for a prototype run. I had 2 big bottles. I kept them all and took them myself, only
Nice.
myself. Didn't share them with anybody. So it gave
Not
me
even
enough
your
to
parents? Come on.
no, not yet.
Okay.
So gave me enough to do 6 months work, and then I did another blood work test, and then I dropped my total cholesterol 70%. I dropped my triglycerides 70%.
Wow.
HDL stayed the same. LDL dropped almost 70%. And so then it was like, oh my goodness, that's got to be key. So filed intellectual property, and then found in the mouse model again sex differences are very well understood to affect lifespan. Women typically live longer than men. And in most longevity studies, the compounds that extend life do a little better job for females than they do for males. So I had, this thought all along that we maybe wouldn't find one optimal that was optimal for the other. And that turned out to be the case. And so the vitamin D worked better in women, actually didn't work well in men for longevity. And then vitamin A worked extremely well in men and not quite so well in women. And actually in the human data, the men, in the article that was published in Aging, the men actually did a little better than the women. And so that's very, very unusual.
Wow.
But that's a long-winded explanation. That would be an elevator pitch that would have gone about 100 floors. So sorry about that.
But it was really fascinating. And I want to appreciate you because it's not often that you get to see behind the curtain, like really how this stuff goes from idea to marketplace. And I find it really, really valuable to appreciate the process because again, from a consumer standpoint, even as a clinician, like we get the end product, we get a little information fact sheet, we get to see some of the research. We're like, okay, we're going to use it, we're not. And so we miss so many of the key important pieces that really flesh out like, how did we get here? How did we get to this as the final version? How do we know with certainty that this does what it says it's going to do and it works the way it's supposed to? And why is there a female version versus a male version? Like why are there 2 different formulations? Do we really need 2 different formulations? Well, you just explained so much that just fills in so many gaps, connects so many dots. I actually loved it. And so I want to kind of bring us to a couple of big moments for our listening audience, which is kind of why the Human Longevity Institute is, of course, really big behind utilizing this particular product in all of our signature age reversal programs. Because when you did the research with the Bucks Institute, kind of as ultimately some of the things that you have shared that's on the website and it's in the data, is that this particular product has shown to increase health span by about 41%, increase lifespan. So health span is how well we're living. Increase lifespan, how long we're living, on average by 12 to 15%.
Right.
And an even more striking bit of data that I think is like we can all wrap our heads around. Another way of looking at this in the work that you've done with True Me, of really looking what's happening at a genetic level, how this is literally helping to remodel, right, our methylation patterns and our accessibility to our DNA, our information that the body needs to replicate properly. One of the reasons that as we get chronologically older, we have breakdown, dysfunction, and disease is that our very code of life isn't able to be fully accessed. If it is accessed, we have a lot of replication errors. There's a lot of breaks in the DNA. They're not
Right.
repairing the way they should. So this product is coming in at that DNA level. And what you have found in that research is upwards on average in as little as 8 months of use of Rejuvant, upwards of an 8-year biological age reversal. I mean, the stats, I've not seen anything comparable. It's like, how, can you speak to this data? Like, I would imagine you're kind of a proud papa when you look at what's out there in the industry, kind of, just stacking a gun. And you already mentioned some of the other things that are out there that we've heard so much about are rapamycin and resveratrol and NMN. And we hear about these molecules that are supposedly just turning back the hands of time. Your research is showing conclusively that yours does. And interestingly enough, there was a recent article published in Aging just here in 2023 that does show that yes, your calcium alpha-ketoglutarate is that longevity molecule, does what it says. But I thought what was really impressive, and Tom, I'm hoping you can speak to this, is what wasn't included on that list, which are these molecules, resveratrol, rapamycin, NMN, like the big buzzwords that we've heard so much about these past few years. What are your thoughts on this? What do you maybe attribute this to?
Well, I think it's the realization by more and more researchers that what you want to be able to do, if you were a biotech company, we'd be saying reprogram your epigenome. Since we're not a biotech company, we're just saying changing the methylation patterns in your DNA back to when you were younger. And so let's back up and do just a little more science here, not too much. But so when a cell has damage, like the DNA due to, let's just say, radiation, just make it simple.
Yep.
And so you've done some damage. So the cell says, oh my God, something is not right. And it sends in some folks to do some repair. And so when they get there, they say, well, gosh, this is the middle of the day and I'm being asked to do all these other things and we haven't got time for this. So we're going to mark this spot where the damage was with a methyl group. And so that's where the methyl tags occur, to mark the spot so that later they can come back and do the repair work, typically at night, for example. So that has been found to correlate very highly, like 98.5%, to your chronologic age. And then this is all Steve Horvath's work originally. Mm-hmm. And then they later said, okay, well, gosh, we've got all these access to these huge blood banks. Most of them are in the UK, thousands and thousands of people over almost 100 years. And we know how they died and when they died. And so why don't we use this and try and predict when people might die and when people might get sick? And so they were then able to develop algorithms that would match methyl patterns to how quickly you were going to age and how soon you were going to die. And that really was a huge breakthrough in the industry, because otherwise we just say, well, gosh, you don't look much better. Maybe you don't feel much better. How do we know anything's happening?
Right.
And that's basically the supplement industry of today. So the reason why this is becoming, I think, much more interesting is, Dr. Sinclair wrote a best-selling book, right? He was not the first person to postulate that aging is caused by epigenetic drift or corruption, but he was the first person to make it widely known to the lay people that that's at least what he thought. That is also what I think. More and more people are coming to the conclusion that epigenetic corruption is what causes aging. So those tags, when they're there saying, hey, I'm broken, come fix me. Everybody has been in the longevity space focusing on the compounds that can do the repair work, mostly enzymes and proteins. All that stuff is not the scarce resource. There's plenty of that in the body. The scarce resource is the substrate that carries those repair folks, if you will, the bus that gets them there. That is alpha-ketoglutarate. And so alpha-ketoglutarate is the scarce, it is the critical resource because it's endogenous, obviously, so the body makes it, but your ability to produce it declines dramatically as you age, tenfold, one order of magnitude. And so it is not being replaced in the diet. You don't eat your vegetables and solve this problem. Nobody ever knew that it was even an issue. So imagine what happens now. Say your life is an apartment building, a very nice one, an apartment building, and it's on a very nice side of town. All of the carpenters, electricians, plumbers, they live on the other side of town, but they take a bus over. And so every year they come and they fix everything that gets broken. But one year, one of their buses breaks down and they can't fix it. So not as many of them show up. And so not everything gets fixed. And so you can see where this is going, right? 10 years later, there's only one bus left. And the amount of places that are tagged for repair are overwhelming and they can't possibly fix it. And so then you have catastrophic failure, and that's death.
Mm.
And so
I
AKG is
love
not
the
something that,
analogy of the bus. Yeah.
yeah, it's a transportation problem.
It is. It is. So we need our Rejuvant. We need our transportation. And
Yep.
I mean, you guys, it's interesting because as a clinician, clinicians, we love the research, we love the studies, we love to go down into the rabbit holes, we love to go into singular pathways, we love to go into different cycles, and one of the things that as much as I love to go into the minutia, it's equally as important to zoom back out and to understand the big picture view. What's really happening in this system, remembering the human body is one entire system. And really, like, I always take it down to a couple of basic things. What does the cell need? What are the main mechanisms of action? And so exactly this. We need transportation. Yes, there's things that the cell needs, but how do they get to the cell? How do they get in? How do they get out? We have the right tools to do the job. We're going to thrive. We don't have the right tools to do the job. We don't have enough gas in the tank for the bus to make it there. We're not going to keep up with the demands of life. And so I believe a common sense approach to appreciating our own health, our capacity to heal. Step one, many of us are already in breakdown dysfunction on the fast path to disease. So having a tool like Rejuvant to give the body what it needs, that transport to get whatever it does already have, to get the good stuff to the areas that have been most heavily tagged. It's part of why you guys, I'm always talking to you about sleep. Like 7 to 9 hours, 7 to 9 hours a night. Sleep is critical. That is, you just heard Tom say, that is time number one when, at least on a daily basis, those buses should be coming through. Repair should be made. The right tools to do the job are being sent out to the different areas throughout the body. So there are a few simple things, if we do it consistently well, can make a profound change in our body. And Tom, there's so much research here. And so what I was trying to say is, as much as we love going into the weeds and really looking at these stats, and the data is incredible, I'm going to post links, you guys, to these research studies, the studies that we are showing that, again and again, are really kind of highlighting the impact of calcium alpha ketoglutarate in the system at that cellular level to really make profound changes. I recommend this product to all of my patients, to all of my practitioners certifying, because if there's one thing that you can do, if this is Tom, you say it on your website, this is fundamental, not supplemental. I mean, if we're no longer able to eat our way to increase the amount of what we have in our bodies of this, then we do need
Right.
to exogenously take it in. And we
Right.
know you've got the delivery form. We know you've got the research. So I'm going to make sure the links are in the show notes. You guys are going to want to check out those studies for all my science-minded folks out there. Um, I want to tell you guys that, this product also, one of the big stats that I love and I think is so profound is that it decreases frailty by upwards of 46%. 46% frailty is really important as we chronologically age. It is one of the leading causes of contributors to all-cause mortality, specifically the more frail. And what does that mean? We go from very fit to a little bit fit to starting to struggle with acts of daily living. We can't lift things as much. We can't pull things, push things. We need to have a walker. We need to have some assistance to kind of get around. We're just a little less capable and able to do the things the way we once used to. We kind of lose that capacity. As we lose that capacity, as we lose that resilience, we are on the fast track of this breakdown and decline. This product helps to reverse that by upwards of 46%. And when we can begin to pump the brakes on that decline process, we can get the tools to the cell to do the healing, to the repair. We reduce that rate and risk of all-cause mortality. And again, Tom, and that's this, you guys, what the research shows is really tightly correlated with cardiovascular disease, cancer, and respiratory illness. So there's so much. And Tom, one of the things we did, there's so much I could just keep talking about. I'm like, you guys, rapid fire hose, some things that you guys don't know, but we did mention. Will you share the stat really quickly about what has from a very interesting way come up in the research of what this product is showing in the gut lining?
Sure. And so this is my data, and so I would have to say it's anecdotal. It's not, a huge study, but in the mouse model, we saw a difference between test and control in the gut biome, and so I thought might as well try it myself. So I did take a test, one that the folks at the Buck recommended, or in US actually recommended. And then I sent it to them to tell me, what the result was. And so at a board meeting, Dr. Kennedy is saying, well, here's what they told me. He said, yes, you have a lot of similarities to the mouse model. You're probably overweight and you eat too much meat and you don't exercise enough. I said, yeah, that's right on. But the one thing, or two things that were really kind of interesting about my overachieving gut biome, I had 100 times more colonies of glutamine and glutamate forming in my gut, which is super critical for longevity. And then the other thing was my mucid layer was 6.6 times higher than the average person, which is that's the protective lining in the gut. So you hear these terms, leaky gut, and now there's a lot of work being published showing that it directly correlates to cancer, to heart disease, to cognitive decline, et cetera. And so it may well be that is more upstream than most people think, i.e. it could be causing all kinds of aging-related problems. And if you can keep the lining integrous, then you may be able to live a lot longer. So I found that very interesting, but it is a physical manifestation of taking Rejuvant for a long time.
Yeah. And that's really profound, you guys, because, when we look at gut permeability and the gut-brain axis, the importance of having a healthy microbiome, it is one of the key factors in just overall in having a healthy, thriving ecosystem in your body. And more people have so many autoimmune conditions. We have so many cases of Crohn's and IBS and Hashimoto's and rheumatoid. And what we know is for a long time, that gut permeability, that leaky gut made a clear correlation with the impact of autoimmunity. And now it's being looked at more and more in the literature to see how this correlates with so many other disease conditions. And so what I want to impart to all of you, and of course it's fun, we kind of kicked today's episode off talking about how this is literally Hollywood's darling right now. And so before I do the wrap up, and I don't want to dismiss that, Tom, talk to us why Hollywood is loving Rejuvant so much. You guys have been getting a lot of press and a lot of buzz from some pretty significant movers and shakers in Hollywood.
Yeah, and so I can't afford to hire them to the point where they would let me use their names. But no, there's quite a few folks who are in the acting field and in the entertainment field who are taking the product. And, they take it for the same reason that I take it. You don't have to do anything else in your life, really. And it actually works better on people who are older and sicker. Most medications, like say cancer medications, They typically work the best when you're younger and earlier in the disease progression. This is the exact opposite. The worse you are, the bigger the improvement. And perhaps that's a percentage thing, but the magnitude is much larger. So people who are older, people who are not in pristine health, typically wind up reversing their biologic age more than maybe a younger person who already is in pretty good shape, which is logical. But when you think about it from a drug point of view, it's kind of the opposite of what most drugs do. It helps people who need the help the most. And I think it's simple, right? It doesn't really require a lot of effort. And, people who are on screen and who are talking and that's their living, they need to look young and they also need to feel young. And they, aside from auto aging, some movie stars in recent movies, making them look younger, you can't act, you can't do the same things physically, etc. So that's their livelihood. And that's why they have an interest. It's simple. And we're the only longevity company that has any data showing that we have a safe, commercially available product that actually works. So and we've had no money for marketing until just recently. We've been able to get some marketing efforts going that I think are going to bring a lot of fruition.
Well, here's what's really great. And, it is not only do you have the clinical data, not only does it do what it says it does, but it's also affordable. And, so to have product that I can take 2 capsules, 2 tablets a day rather, and I can have age reversal effects. It's something that's giving my body something that's naturally declining and I cannot get any other way. I absolutely love it. I love the data. I love the research. I love just you, your entire team, just who you all, the integrity behind the development of this, the understanding of what went into this. And I really do believe, Tom, that you truly are going to impact humanity for generations to come. And that's really what it's all about. How do we live better today? What are the simple things that we can do? And we've talked a lot. So I'm going to wrap it up with a kind of the highlight reel of this conversation. Of course, Hollywood loves this. We all love this. It works. It can reverse biological age upwards of 8 years in as little as 8 months of use. And Tom, I've got to see your data sets. After several years of use, you are continuing to remodel your methylation, your epigenome in a more thriving state. So this becomes part of your long-term just health plan, right? You don't need 20 things. We learned today that less is actually more. More does not mean better. And especially when you're looking at supplements, I'm going to encourage you all, pare back. Take only what is essential and understand what you're taking and why you're taking it. Make sure it's really a needle mover for you. And if you are going to bring on something new like Rejuvant to your overall lifestyle stack, don't take it at the same time you're taking 5 other supplements. You want to take this as a standalone. Give it time on that empty stomach, let it come in and do its magic. Stack in your other supplements later in the day, but don't do I'm just going to throw them all in the gullet at once. Don't do that. It's not going to help you. It's only going to actually, reduce the effectiveness as you do that. I think it's important for all of us to appreciate and know that, remember, there are a few very simple lifestyle practices that when you stack it in, so we can stack in lifestyle with a simple
Absolutely.
molecule,
Mhm.
and if I had to tell everybody, like my favorites, the biggest needle movers are going to be sleep, because that's when this molecule can actually drive the bus and can help your body do what it's designed to do. I like to keep it really simple. Rise with the sun, sleep with the dark. Eat with the sun, fast with the dark. You look at that natural 24-hour light dark cycle. You want 7 to 10 hours of sleep. So we want to get some good sleep, make it a priority. If you need some help, go over to Human Longevity Institute. We have a lot of resources there to help you guys. And then the other big thing, so sleep at night and move during the day. I'm not saying go exercise like a crazy person. I'm saying literally just move in ways that feel good to you. Instead of sitting at a desk all day, stand, right? Park further away in the parking lot. Go walk the dog, go dance with your spouse, like do things that just feel good. It doesn't have to be crazy, because a long life lived well, means really enjoying and savoring the moments that we have. And doing a few simple things consistently can help us get there. Tom, you're a leader. You're a friend. You are somebody I respect the hell out of. And I really want to thank you today for being here with us. Any final thoughts? Anything that I missed? Because I don't want to. Any other thoughts before we wrap it?
No, not that I can think of. I think you got the greatest hits, and that's pretty good. Sleep, by the way, actually has been shown to remodel the epigenome. So it, along with exercise, are very, very helpful. But in and of themselves, they're not fast acting. So they're part of, I think, of a program, as you had mentioned, and those are things that would be additive to Rejuvant for sure. And it's not that every supplement is going to be a problem with Rejuvant, but most people are not going to do what they ought to do, right? You take a baseline first with Rejuvant, then add something, and then test again to see whether or not it actually was beneficial. That's what we went through for you. And there's not too many that do, but there are some more. And we continue. There'll be an improved version at some point in the future.
I love it. So rejuvantlife.com, use the code DRM to get your 10% discount on both the product and that DNA testing. So you can go ahead and get your before and after. And be sure to go check out our Rewind 12-week age reversal program. We feature Rejuvant in it. We have a proven neurotechnology, and we teach you all about those essential lifestyle practices. We teach you how to layer them in over time with time to make them fun. So you are getting the most out of every moment so you truly can live ageless and be limitless. So gang, thanks for tuning in today. Again, Tom, thank you so much for being our guest. It's been an honor.
Thank you, Dr. Petersen. It was a lot of fun. Happy to do it.
Loved it so much. All right, friends, go over to rejuvantlife.com/Dr. M. Get your 10% now. And until next time, don't just think about it. Go be about it. Dr. Melissa, we'll be together soon. Take care.